Our first reader tonight is Chris Gerrib. Did I say that right? Okay. I was afraid I'm going to say this stuff wrong. All right. Chris Gerrib has wanted to be a writer since he was a child, riding his bicycle to the library in the small central Illinois town where he grew up. Since then, he spent a tour in the U.S. Navy, got an MBA, and now has a day job with a multinational software company as a project manager. For fun, he plays golf, travels, and is a voracious reader. He lives in the Chicago suburbs and is active in his local Rotary Club. He's had 4 science fiction novels published, and his first suspense thriller, Strawberry Gold, was recently favorably reviewed by Publishers Weekly. That's a big deal, y'all. So you can learn more about him at privatemarsrocket.net. Please welcome him to the stage.
You can go up just a scotch. All right, everyone can hear me? Yeah. Hi. All right, like I said, Chris Gerrib. Strawberry Gold is my first conventional mystery thriller. And it's set in a fictional small East Central Illinois town, but I had a small East Central Illinois town in mind when I wrote it. So I'm going to read from chapter 1, so I don't think you need any more introduction. So, here we go. Chapter 1, Patrick Kowalski. I hate the smell of nursing homes. It's a smell of piss, dust, and death. January 17th, 1986, my 18th birthday, found me visiting a nursing home. It was a Friday, and the start of the most important 2 months of my life. The day had started shitty and had not improved. I honestly think my mom forgot it was my birthday. Hard to imagine since she was there, but things were definitely going seriously south in our life. And so no cake, no card, and definitely no gifts. My dad was in the hospital, sick with something we just found out was called good pasture syndrome. They were bringing in a machine from a big hospital in India the next day, Saturday, to try and cure him. He'd been in and out of hospitals enough for you to know that they only did shit like that on a Saturday if they thought that otherwise you might not make it to Monday. I'd also found out the bank was foreclosing on our house. Dad had been in and out of hospitals for 2 years now, first when he lost his leg and now with his not so good pasture stuff. The only way we had food for Christmas dinner was that the IGA where Mom worked had given us a ham and let her take some dinged and dented cans home. But when you're 18, you still have to go to school, or at least I did, until I graduated in May or dropped out to live under a bridge, whichever came first. So I was in a nursing home, interviewing my great-grandmother for my senior project in oral history of Eastville. At the time, I thought the project, let alone the school, was a stupid idea. Later when, because of the project, I found myself staring down the barrel of a gun, I was sure it was stupid. I was wrong. Oral history project by Patrick Kowalski, Eastville High School, May 2nd, 1986. I started this project by asking my oldest living relative, Barbara Pikus, who we in the family called Great Barb, what her earliest memory was. This interview was conducted on January 17th, 1986. Here's what she said. My oldest memory is of the day when the man with the good boots showed up. He was the first person I ever saw die. I must have been 4 or 5, so that meant I was speaking only Lithuanian. It was a cool day and dry. I remember that the trains weren't running. They usually roared by our house, belching big clouds of black smoke. I later learned this was during the big railroad strike. Anyway, my very first memory of that day was seeing some men walk down the road in front of our house. House. Big word for a shack with an outhouse in the back and a pump well by the barn. But I was little, and it was all I knew. Anyway, I saw some men walking by. They were waving black flags, and I waved at them. My mom came out, and I asked her if we could join them. Mom said something I didn't understand and took me by the hand into the house. She probably called them anarchists because that's what they were. Besides the flags, they were carrying big wooden beams to block the railroad tracks. No, now I remember. It was the day before my 4th birthday. That had been May 21st, 1894. I remember being excited about my birthday. We made church mice look rich, so I wasn't expecting anything. But thanks to the man with good boots, I got a rag doll and a piece of candy. Chapter 2, Monday, May 21st, 1894. Why isn't this damn train moving? Dan Forrest asked the conductor. As he did, he winced from the sharp pain in his chest. Heartburn, he thought. That's what I get for eating at backcountry train station restaurants. Strikers have blocked the tracks, the conductor replied. A frown flickered across his pinched face. Strikers? Dan asked. The conductor shrugged, his too-tight jacket bunching up. That's what I said. Damn anarchists, Dan replied, trying to ignore another sharp pain in his chest. They should be shot. The National Guard's got some men on our train behind us, the conductor replied. I expect that's what they're going to do. When is the Guard getting here? Another shrug. As soon as they can, I suppose. They might be having trouble getting an engineer to move the locomotive. Some of the engineers went on strike, too. Anarchists, he thought. Reds and anarchists. All of them should be shot. Dan reached under his coat and fingered the revolver he kept there. It was one of those newfangled Colt Army 38s. He'd finally retired to 45. Damn thing was getting too heavy to lug around. Are the trains running north of the blockage, he asked. As far as I know, yes. And how far are we from a station? Not far, the conductor replied. 5 miles. Dan looked out the window, glad the wind was blowing the coal smoke from the engine away from the train. He could see a dirt road running parallel to the tracks, and it looked like there might be some houses just off in the distance. Think I could get a horse? Get another shrug. Did this damn man know anything? Probably. Or at least somebody to give you a ride. Dan looked at the sturdy leather pouch at his feet. That gold needs to be in Chicago by morning. It ain't going to get there at this rate. He stood up, ignoring the sudden dizziness he felt. Get me off of this train. I can't issue a refund, the conductor said, backing away. Hang the refund, Dan replied. Ain't my money anyway. Dan traveled light. Everything he had was either on his back or in the bag, which he picked up. It felt a lot heavier than it had that morning in Nashville. He glared at the conductor. Well, follow me. The pair went to the rear of the train, ignoring the curious looks of a handful of other people. The conductor stepped out on the platform and produced a metal folding set of stairs from somewhere. He put them from the steps of the train, rail car to the ground, and clambered out. You want to go north, the conductor said, pointing in the direction they were traveling. Nearest station is Eastville. Thanks, Dan growled. He stepped off, grateful for the light and cooling breeze. He shifted the revolver in a coat pocket for easier access. As Dan drew even with the locomotive on the road, one of the strikers, more a boy than a man, saw him and waved from their barricade on the single set of tracks. The boy didn't look quite right in the head. One of the other strikers, a dago by the complexion and holding an antique musket, had followed the boy's eyes. He glared and said something to his companion, too quiet for Dan to hear. Probably talking dago, Dan thought, and I wouldn't understand anyway. Dan fingered the revolver in his pocket. 6 beats 1 any day of the week. After a quick conference with his fellow anarchist, dago contemptuously waved Dan on. Apparently the blackguards are still okay with Shank's mare. Dan walked on, half sad there hadn't been any trouble. The farmhouse he'd seen from the tracks was just past the barricade. There was a black flag, really just a cheap strip of cloth, flying by the door. Anarchist, Dan thought, and probably not of the mind to help a train passenger. He kept walking. As he walked, he pulled a rag from his pocket to wipe the sweat from his brow. Getting soft in my old age, he thought. Hell, I've carried heavier loads in hotter weather than this without breaking a sweat. The road curved to the right, aiming to avoid a small creek which the railroad had trestled over. He came out of sight, the anarchist next, and walked into a tree-lined road. It didn't look like it had rained, but this little bit of road was still muddy. Must be the shade in the creek. The road crosses the stream about 100 yards or so down the way, on a bridge made of a few logs, bark still clinging to it. The man could have waded the creek, Dan thought, then got a whiff of it. Someone was dumping sewage into the smell. Good thing that the bridge is here, Dan thought, glancing at his new boots. He wiped his brow again and inhaled deeply, trying and failing to catch his breath. Gotta leave off the pie, he thought, patting his gut. The road straightened out north of the bridge. It was lined by trees on both sides and uninhabitable. The tracks had to be to Dan's left, with the leaves and trees and leaf. There was no way he could see it. He kept walking. Something was moving around in the bushes, small by the sound of it. He patted the revolver again. Probably a squirrel, or maybe a fox looking for a squirrel dinner. How am I doing on time?
We're still good. Yeah,
Okay. Sorry, I need them to keep track of me. So, about a half mile down a deserted road, Dan came by a freshly cut tree stump just in the right of the road. He sat down on it heavily, putting the bag at his feet. The pain in his chest had gone from occasional to continuous, and he just couldn't catch his breath. Despite the cool May air, he was sweating, his shirt clinging to his back. He looked down at the bag. $24,000 worth of double eagles is damn heavy, he said, his voice startling a squirrel. It was 10 times what he made in a year, and he was comfortable. He looked around. The light was fading, and the only creature in sight was a squirrel busily chewing on a nut. Damnation, he said it again, the squirrel too busy with his nut to even look up. This gold was not going to get to Chicago tonight. Not at this rate, not at this pace at any rate. The squirrel dashed away, running into the forest. You're supposed to take the nut with you, Dan said to it. He looked down at the bag again. I'll hide the bag. I'll hide the bag. Without the bag, I can move faster. I'll walk into town, hire a horse, come back for the bag, and then move on. He got up and put thoughts into action. He did a little bit of hiding the bag. It took longer than he liked. Hell, everything was taking longer than he liked today. But he got the bag hidden. Since it was a few feet away from the stump, he could easily find it. He stepped back on the road. Maybe I'll get a hotel room in town tonight. That's it?
No, give it 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Oh. All right, so skipping ahead, he walks down the road and he gets to the house that Barb's at. He says to the girl, do you have a horse? The girl stared at him. Dan suddenly felt very dizzy. He tried to steady himself, but he lost his balance on the road and crumpled to the ground. The fall somehow knocked the wind out of him. He struggled to breathe, his mouth kicking up dust in the road. Pain in his chest went from strong to shooting. He let out an involuntary scream, but all that came out was a croak. Dan lay on the dirt, unable to move. The last thing he heard was a man's voice saying in a heavy Russian accent, nice boots. And that's chapter 2. So I did make a mistake in my research. They should have been red flags, not black. Sorry. Yeah, well. And that $24,000 in gold in 1986 will be worth $600,000, just to put it in character. So I have books for here. I'll sign them. And also on for sale anywhere they sell finer books in electronic and regular form. If they don't sell them, they don't sell finer books. Thank you.